Writing for your life. Let us go with respect and with the commitment that we will not exploit it, colorize it, or decimate it, that we will honor what it offers us, that we will use it in keeping with the principles of the territory, and that we will think of its treasures as gift to us that we will pass on. In this way, we will be able to transform inner exploration into public concern. Becoming a writer. When I was quite young, I promised myself that I will become a writer. Later, when I was despairing of this possibility, I threw myself a challenge. If I could write a novel by the time I was 25, I might become a novelist. But if I failed to embark upon this project by that time, then I would forget the possibility of a creative life. At 25, I had just had a child and was pregnant again. I had started graduate school, was involved in politics, and was trying to be attentive to my marriage life, as well as several friendships. But the challenge remained with me and weighed heavily on my conscience. Ultimately, I started a novel, Waterwall, which I eventually relegated to a file cabinet. Afterward, I like to say that I was blessed by not knowing that the novel was weak and made, because if I had known how undeveloped it was, I would never have written anymore. But something else happened in beginning this novel that was far more important than the book itself, where formerly I had thought of myself as someone who would never write a book. I now began to think of myself as a writer. To write is above all else to construct a self. Only secondly is it to record one's history, to express feelings and ideas, to create characters, or to communicate with others. Journal entries and life histories as well as fictions, poems, and plays are variations of the most fundamental human need to know oneself deeply and in relationship to the world. Beginning the requisite first novel, that commentary on my adolescent life was evidence of a serious commitment to discover who I was and how I saw the world. 15 years later, I was perplexed by the form of a piece I was writing. By this time, I had learned that the writing and not I must determine its own shape and direction. Still, I was uneasy. I didn't know what the piece was. Finally, I heard a voice inside say, "It's a poem." Another voice, more familiarly mine, asked, "How do you know?" "Because I wrote it, and I have become a poet." The voice whispered shyly. Those 15 years were an important period of transition and development. Within that time, I had not only to write but to learn something about the life of a poet. That is, the life that will feed and support the work. It was not easy to do. Either circumstances always mitigated against poetry, and it was difficult to give the work the priority it needed. But ultimately, two things emerged. First, the beginning of a body of work that seemed to arise from responses to inner urgencies, and second, and just as important, a life that was conscious and aware and that bore the shape of a writer. Beginning. The first and foremost questions a writer, public or intimate, must ask is, what must I say? To begin to know the answer to this question is to begin to know the essential self. What must I say? What must I say? What must I say? What must I say? And finally, What must I say to you? The beginning, something wants to be said. We don't know what it is or what shape it desires. An intuitive feeling, a pressure around the heart, perhaps asking it to open. We pick up a pen or sit down at the computer. This is the moment. Write. No matter what, write. Don't try to name it in advance. Don't call it play or journal writing or poem. Don't ask it to have a form or to be spelled correctly or to appear in sentence, but write it pen so that you can erase it and promise as a way of showing respect that it will not be thrown away. The beginning, a blank page, it feels as if we will sit before it forever. Then let us sit before it forever. Let us sit before it until we can no longer resist writing. This beginning is important. It is a right we are trying to cast a swirl of smoke and inspiration, just the barest breath of something coming into ourselves or going out. The journal as a dialogue with the self. Write anything for 5 minutes. It doesn't matter what. Write as if you are walking in an unknown woods, attentive to anything you might see, or poking at an indistinct mass, wondering what it is. Whether it's alive or dead, whether it will snarl suddenly, turn and bite. Keep writing. Let the writing feel welcome. Keep writing. Don't look back. Don't edit. Don't think of what it might be. Could be. Don't think. Only welcome it. Make a place for it to be. Later, there will be time to be curious. Later, we can see what awake us or what insisted itself. After writing like this for a long time, it will be appropriate to look back and see what was engaged us, what intruded into our daily life, what obsessions or fascinations propelled us. But at this moment, try only to be present and to allow the words to emerge. If you have never kept a journal, this may be the time to begin. Keeping a journal is not so difficult. Beginning to keep it is the challenge. It has always been easy for me to keep a travel journal. When I am in a foreign place, I appreciate the journal's familiar presence. It is the close friend to whom I can confidence everything and convey my experience. One way to start a regular journal is to imagine that you are traveling. For the first week, follow this sequence. Imagine that your daily life is occurring in a foreign country. Carry a journal with you wherever you go and write it in whenever you have a moment. At the beginning or end of the day, online, in a supermarket, waiting for transportation in a restaurant, and so on. Write anything and everything, snatches of conversation, observations, concerns, dreams, plan, line of poems, letters, newspaper headlines. Allow yourself to record anything and everything without judging its appropriateness or meaning. As this becomes comfortable, expand the journal by adding emotional responses and observations. Enter into dialogue with the things you have seen and heard. Next, experiment with thinking in the journal, with recording ideas and exploring them. Finally, consider the journal as a place where beginning fictions or snatches of poems may not only be recorded, but explored and developed. If we imagine that our daily life is occurring in a foreign country, we will be like travelers, exceedingly attentive to every detail. curious about the meaning of everything, and enthusiastic about experience, no matter what is quality. At the end of your trip, you will be able to look back over the journal to discover what you have seen, what has obsessed and fascinated you, and what, if anything, you wish to make of it. The writing we are doing here may remain in journal form forever. It may occur in the moment and never be considered again, or it may be the beginning of a longer piece. It may be addressed to another individual in a letter or a poem, or to the world, eventually in the form of a novel. But in this moment, we need to think of none of this, only of the words presenting themselves and our willingness to set them down. Thank you.